It's terrific to see so many of you here this evening, so many familiar faces. As James says, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Mark Hedgecoe. I'm the head of Rogan Scotland. We've been open for something over a year now, and this is the first project out of the gate. I'm enormously proud of it. It's been a real labour of love for a load of people, many of whom are here this evening, and I'm very grateful to everyone who worked so hard on the series, and it's terrific to see it to come together in such a fantastic way. We're very proud of it. As James said, we wanted to celebrate the series going out. It's broadcasting on March the 4th, Friday, March the 4th. The first episode is going out on that evening, and they're dropping BBC 2, who are broadcasting it, are dropping all three. March the 10th, there we go. One, just as well. Yeah, you'd be very disappointed on March the 4th. March the 10th. It's at the moment, and you know, BBC can change their mind. And they're dropping all three episodes on iPlayer as well, so you can watch it as a box set, as it's intended to be watched. Many thanks to the BBC, who have been enormously helpful on the whole project, particularly Emma Cahusac, and who was seminal to the whole project, who isn't here this evening, but she was a great support. So we're very grateful to her and the channel. As James says, and as Salita said, after the show, there'll be a 30-minute or so question and answer screening with some folk from the production. It'd be lovely if you stayed for that, and then it would be really lovely if you stayed for drinks and eats afterwards back on the mezzanine. And we're there till closing time. So do please don't hurry home, as they say. So first and foremost, though, I'm delighted to be able to introduce the reason we're here, which is the screening of Becoming Frida Kahlo, the first episode of the three-part series, which is entitled The Making and the Breaking. Thank you very much.
Well, welcome everyone, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's getting used to the idea of Frida Kahlo dusting. I missed that detail when I watched it first time around. So welcome to this special post-screening Q&A on Becoming Frida Kahlo. I'm Jan Patience, your host for tonight. I write about art, and I often describe myself as an art anorak, so I can't tell a lie, this was a dream gig. I hope you enjoyed episode 1 as much as I did, and it has whet your appetite for episodes 2 and 3. All 3 episodes will launch on BBC 2 and BBC iPlayer from Friday, March the 10th. A bit of housekeeping before we speak to these fantastic creatives behind this series for the next 30 minutes. You are all invited back to the mezzanine for some drinks, and we hope to see you there. Please do tweet or post on your social media of choice about the screening and the series, and don't forget to use the hashtag Becoming Frida Kahlo. So, I would like to welcome my guests here. There's, to my right, Louise Lockwood, who is director. Mark Hedgecoe, who is head of Rogan Scotland and executive producer on Becoming Frida Kahlo. We have Nancy Bornat. Am I saying that right? Yes. Right. Executive producer from Rogan Scotland, and Becky Marshall, from who is the producer on Becoming Frida Kahlo. So we've had a real flavour of Frida Kahlo from this fantastic first episode. Now, I suppose my main question is, Frida Kahlo is such an icon. We feel we know a lot about her, but do we really? So why now, and what's different about this, Lou? What can you tell me? Why now? Why Frida now?
Do I need to hold this? Oh, yeah. Okay. Do I? Oh, hi. I should sing. Sorry. Honestly, I'm not actually sure why, because I just got offered the job. No, I'm joking, right? No. Well, no, actually, it was Emma Cusack, the commissioner. It was her baby, really, and she wanted it made. But I'm not sure why now. Do you know?
I think, are you saying why now in terms of what is it, why are we interested in her now?
Yeah, there's resurgence of interest in Frida Kahlo.
Yeah, I think every generation kind of interprets her for their own, takes her for their own, and looks at her in a different way. And I think what's interesting about her is she speaks incredibly powerfully, I think, to our modern times and our modern kind of sensibilities. I think she has become a very powerful sort of feminist icon. Mm-hmm. She suffered terrible disability. She had her terrible accident. She had this tempestuous affair with a man she loved deeply. She had relationships with women as well as men. And I think a lot of those things speak to a kind of, modern interests and kind of preoccupations. And I think it was amazing when we were talking to young assistant producers and researchers, particularly women, when we were sort of staffing it up. It was amazing the number who said, "Oh my God, I've got a picture of Frida Kahlo on my wall," particularly women, actually. Yeah. And it clearly spoke to people, a modern generation, in a really powerful way. And I think we all feel that.
Yeah, because her story is better known today than Diego Rivera. I was interested, I think maybe Nancy, you can answer this. It was originally, the working title I noticed was Frida and Diego. So, what changed during the making?
Well, I suppose we wanted to see the story always through her eyes, but also I think we also never lost sight of the fact that their relationship for both of them was the biggest thing in their lives. And whilst she is kind of fiercely determined to make it as an artist, she wouldn't have made it in that time without him. And what's interesting as you watch the further episodes is how she uses, she uses her position as the wife of Diego Rivera to elevate herself, to get herself noticed. She uses her experience of having a father who's a photographer to know how to present herself, to know how to make herself somebody you want to look at. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I'm quite answering the question, but no. I think it changed because we wanted it to be about her and how she made herself. But he is at the centre of that story. Yeah. So.
And you had tremendous access to contributors, to archive imagery. Becky, I think you sort of got completely immersed in Frida.
Very much so. Yeah. I think for me, like the starting process with a project like this is always to read everything, or at least as much as you can.
And what did you read then? What did you watch?
Well, I started with the famous biography is Hayden Herrera, who's in the film's biography, which was in the 70s, and it's very much the sort of foundational text for a lot of what people think they know about Frida Kahlo, partly because it's viewed through a slightly 70s feminist lens. And I think the interesting thing as we researched further was that the scholarship around Frida Kahlo has, there's not been a sort of revisionism, but there's differences in terms of the placing of emphasis about parts of her work and also about her relationship with Diego Rivera. And, on a project like this, I had an amazing assistant producer who I think is here, Emmy, who I worked with. We really just started the process by contacting everyone that we'd read work by and then speaking to them in very long Zoom calls. And from that process, kind of working out who were going to be our sort of core people to tell this story, who had both the academic knowledge, but really also the ability to bring the story to life, which is really the challenge when you're making a film about someone who, there are only two people alive who directly knew Frida Kahlo, and they're both in their late 90s. So your challenge is how do you get close to someone without the access to people who directly knew them? And I think the amazing thing that we found was the work that these academics had done, they had spent so much time trying to get close to her themselves that I think you can feel that in the way that they speak about her and her work.
Yeah, you feel that they really knew her, almost personally, I think, yeah. And so the process took quite a long time, I presume, yes, Lou? Because you went...
To talk about the process.
You were in Scotland in a sort of female-led team, which is always great, we love that. And then you were out to Mexico, or the US first, and then Mexico. Could you talk a little bit about that and tell us how that worked?
Yeah, sure. So it's just over a year, I think. 'Cause when did you start, Becky?
November 2021.
So year and a couple of months for the 3 parts, but small team. So quite a lot of pre-production. Becky writing the scripts, all the kind of like big treatment with a lot of the research, and then, as Becky said, with Emmy finding like the best contributors to tell the most comprehensive story, but also like very aware as well of being a kind of female-led team that we were like unashamedly, I think, wanting to tell her story through a 21st century lens, which is really important. So get the story together, head off to we did 3 weeks in the States and then 3 weeks in Mexico after that. But we also had a Mexican crew, which was brilliant. So it was just the 4 of us on the road for 6 weeks. So we had a Mexican DOP he came to the States as well, and another Mexican producer. So which was brilliant because we're not from Mexico.
Yeah, so they had that insider sort of knowledge of the well, I think you said earlier they had a great knowledge of Frida.
Yeah,
also,
they know loads
and they know
about her already. Yeah. And also just things that you just don't know. It's like you can't say America to a Mexican.
Yeah.
Just things that you just don't know as a British person.
Yeah.
So
I think that was something we were really conscious of from the very beginning, was that we are a white team that we're making this, and that it was really important to have the understanding of the actual Mexican experience as part of the crew that we were working with. And I think both Alex and Maria, who were our team on the ground in Mexico, brought a huge amount to the shoot, I would say, and that especially that them coming to America and doing that side of the shoot. So as you'll see in the second episode, Diego in particular did a huge amount of work in major institutions in America, and seeing those murals, but with someone who understood the history of Mexican muralism standing beside you and being able to tell you how to view the murals, meant that the way we shot the murals was through a sensitive lens, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's such a lot of history to come in the following episodes. It's it's an eye-opener, actually, and about this. I don't know if you want to speak about the way that Diego got all these commissions to do murals, and he was taking the money from Rockefeller and all the rest of it, all these brilliantly wealthy, maybe not so brilliant, but he was a committed communist, but had been kicked out.
What's amazing about the story, and it very much unfolds in episodes 2 and 3, is the way in which both Diego and Frida were almost Zelig-like, kind of coming across these characters through their lives, particularly in the States, but also in Mexico. Of course, she had an affair with Trotsky later on, but also she was in Paris as well with the Surrealists. So their lives are kind of intertwined with these kind of famous sort of iconic figures through this.
The amazing farting seats in the front row.
James doesn't agree with that at all. But it's and that's that sort of sense in which they're intertwined with people like Henry Ford, with Rockefeller.
Telling the story of that era is really kind of rich in detail, and Andre Breton, the surrealist, like you say, and he takes a shine to Frida, invites her over to Paris, and
you
then
could almost tell just a history of the early 20th century through the people that Diego and Frida encountered in their lives. Everyone is there.
Yeah.
Every film director, every major political player, every major, millionaire of New York. It's quite astonishing how much their lives intersect with a lot of that that period in time.
Yeah, I mean, you had 3 episodes, which is great, Nancy, but I mean, sort of, you still must have had to lose a lot of detail along the way.
Yeah, for sure. But we were talking the other day. What was interesting about this project and her story was that, like Lou said, we were a small team, but we honestly never disagreed about the elements that mattered, about what we wanted, what we were drawn to in her story, in the history, what we needed to keep, what we could kind of suggest by, in other parts of it. And yes, there's always more you can put in, but I hope that when you watch all 3 parts, you feel that we've boiled it down, so that you feel, like Becky says, that you get as close as you possibly can to somebody who was born over 100 years ago. But and watching tonight, I was really kind of on the big screen, seeing her face, her eyes again. It sort of taken in like the first time almost, this, and thinking about how she really did live. She was a real woman.
She was a real person, but she's been sort of reduced to that image. I suppose that image that we see behind us is.
But then we're captivated by her image and her art for a reason, because it's extraordinary, because she demands that you look at her, demands that she matters, and I think it's that powerful gaze and the fact that she sort of refuses to kind of, I don't know, tone down the feelings and experiences. They're there for you, and you have to take it in.
Yeah, I mean, what comes across, I think, in that first episode, that she was really, a kick-ass kind of gal right from the outset. She was wearing the suits, and she was, there's the tragic accidents. I mean, did you know that much about her before you started? Do you think how was it for you as a director to paint the portrait of her? Because she really just came to life. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people just fall in love with her all over again.
Yeah, no, I didn't know. I mean, I knew there'd been like an accident that had like sort of life-changing effects on her, and I knew about her shitty husband. But I didn't appreciate.
But he was lovable.
But he was, yeah. But actually, I'd just reduced it to that, to thinking what I knew about him, and I didn't understand. Actually, no, they were madly in love, and they did really like support each other. And he was unfaithful, so was she. I'm not condoning either side, but they had a complicated relationship. But ultimately, I think. I don't know what I think, actually. Lots of things.
Well, I wanted to ask you, particularly Lou, about the way that you presented the information, because it's not the usual art documentary with an omniscient presenter telling you what to think, and which is what I really loved about it, actually. And I think there's so many different techniques that I want to ask you about, and I don't know if you want to pass them around, but you mentioned it's like the Super 8. Sort of
fake Super 8.
So, I mean, I'm sure everyone in the room will be interested in this. So it's that appearance of the period that if you were looking through a cine film, that's how you get her. So how did all that work? And because you had to source all this archive material, and was there much footage around of her?
No, there's I think it's just under 3 minutes that exist anywhere of Frida. That's moving footage. No sound at all. There's no recording of her voice anywhere. But loads of photographs, which was really, really lots of photos. But I suppose it all started though with the story. I think it's quite a Rogan thing as well, to sort of tell the story that's just about the person and to understand the person, and then all the other bits that fit around it are kind of just for that particular person. So it was all, anyway, it was the life led, but then when you look at, how are we going to illustrate that? There's not a lot of footage of her anyway, and then there's not much footage of that was relevant from early 1900s. So there was always a kind of missing bit. So that's when I'm like, maybe we could make our own, basically. That's kind of where it kind of came from. So, Super 8 film, far too expensive. So then we just sort of found a way to shoot like rubbish footage, basically. Yeah.
I think the key with that footage as well was, and this is, Lou's going to get embarrassed about me being nice about her. But that was from the very beginning, you sort of were very clear about wanting her point of view. And the way, you know, I was there with you on the shoot, the way that you shot those images on the shoot compared to, say, our director of photography. Our director of photography is there shooting the, you know, the beautiful images, the kind of one step removed images. Mm-hmm. But Lou was there side by side with him with her camera, shooting what she was imagining Frida would be seeing if she was in that location.
Right.
And
so
that's a lot of what you see.
It's her point. It's Frida's.
It's almost imagining how, through Frida's point of view, what that scene would have been. And I think hopefully that comes across. But I think that was a real like masterstroke on Lou's part as a director to think that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because visually it gives it just that sort of extra punch, I think, you know, and you know, you're watching a film about an artist, so it sort of gives it that, it takes it to a different level as well. So, I mean, was there anything, I don't know, Mark, if you want to answer this, that really surprised you? Did you discover something, or several things about Frida that you didn't know?
Lots of things. I mean, I didn't know an awful lot about her before. Much like Lou, I had sort of a sketchy knowledge of her. I think her kind of agency came through during the research and the production. The fact that she you know, terrible things happened to her, but she wasn't a victim, and she made decisions all the way through her life about what she wanted to do and how she wanted to lead it. And I think that surprised me. I think her ability to, she's clearly incredibly charming and able to win over people, and people loved her. I mean, you get that from the word go. That felt like you were getting to know somebody who was a real character, and who, if you met, would be kind of luminous in the room. You know, if you walked into a bar and they were there, they would be magnetic.
Yeah.
You know, and that sort of I found that interesting, and obviously her art as well. That way in which her art is kind of blended with her life, and I think lots of artists do that, but I think it's taken to an almost extreme level with her, whereby it's inextricable from her life. Every painting is about her and what's going on around her, or seems to be, and that felt obviously like a gift when it comes to kind of telling her story, done visually for obvious reasons. So lots of things is the answer.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, as a journalist, I felt there was several things that I didn't know, and the sort of newsiness of, even though it's history, there was new to me. There was in episode 2 you have the granddaughter of her friend, who reads out from her diaries, and the friend was also documenting Diego's murals, and it's very, very moving because she's there at the birth of the child that doesn't survive, and the one then obviously Frida paints that very vividly. So and then that same friend documents when Lennon was put into one of Diego's murals, and then a Rockefeller mural, and they wanted him out. So she took a photograph before it was destroyed. So I mean, it's just fascinating, sort of this whole sort of slice of pre-war history, isn't it? Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Nancy?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. You realise they're living through times where things are being contested, and there's a possibility of building a different life and being, in this episode, you feel very much she's growing up in a time where she is, women can be different, women can lead different lives, and she and Diego are imagining a different world, and yet then we're watching how difficult that is, how much, like you say, when the painting Lenin in, how much that is an act of defiance, how much that is a kind of a sort of a crazy thing to do. But also I think it's interesting. You're not alone. The diary, I was thinking about the diary the other day, that it makes you realise that her friend that she makes, Lucien Bloch, she's keeping a diary. I started to think she's writing down what's happening to Frida, because she's realising she's in the presence of someone who's quite extraordinary. And what's happening needs to be recorded, and you feel that in what she's writing, and I think that's, as well as it taking us really close because we're hearing through the voice of a friend, it makes you realise, like Mark says, she was somebody pretty unforgettable.
Yeah, and these friends stayed with her. Yeah.
I think as well, and that was a big part in the research, was without her actual voice or filmed interviews of her, the closest we could really get to her was her own writings, her own letters, but also, this diary that we're talking about is mainly in episode 2, which was her friend who was documenting their time together. And it's kind of those moments of history where, like, you can get close to someone because that's what's been written down and in their voice. And I think picking through that material was, and Amy again, shout out to Amy, there was a lot of work done behind the scenes in reading, thousands and thousands of pages of letters to boil down to, that's the line that really captures that moment. And I think that helps you hopefully to get a bit closer to Frida, because you can hear a little bit of her life in her own words.
And she wrote a lot of letters.
A huge number,
Yeah.
particularly in her years in the United States, because she dearly, dearly missed Mexico and her family.
And you use this technique of, in the letters, it's voiced by an actor. So do you want to talk a little bit about the actor? I don't know if she's in the room with us today.
So, yeah, she is. So, the voice of Frida was obviously a really, really important decision. And we spent a lot of time looking... And listening, yes. And I don't mind telling you, Gabby, but we went to all the agencies in London, and as you think, there'll be somebody there, but actually, Gabby, who lives in Glasgow, who grew up 2 streets away from where Frida was living, from Coyoacán. So,
That's amazing, isn't it?
So, yeah.
Has a Frida Kahlo tattoo?
Yeah.
Did you have that before? Yeah. It was meant to be. That's great. I don't know how we're doing for time. I haven't got...
Probably other questions.
Yeah. Well, actually, Mark, what other projects are coming from Rogan Scotland that we can expect?
So we've got various things at different stages, but the thing we've got that has been announced is a true crime series that's in the edit at the moment, which is the story of a young woman who was a Swedish woman who was found on the beach at Prestwick 17 years ago, and the sort of mystery around what happened to her. So that's the next thing out of the
Okay,
game.
and when will that come through?
I don't know, I suspect probably sometime over the summer. It's probably likely to TX or in the autumn, I would guess.
Great. I don't know if anyone's got any burning questions that you want to ask before we wrap up and you'll get back to the bar. There's, I'm sure, a room full of people here. Yeah. Do you want to shout? Or?
Yeah, I'll just shout. I loved the film, actually. I thought it was very exciting and beautiful. But this is a question for Lou, is whether you learned to like Frida as a person. When you're doing a biography, are you fond of the person?
I think I really respect her. I think...
Does that mean you're not fond of her?
No, I think she's hilarious, actually. There's a lot of stuff that didn't go in, and she's she's filthy, which I love. And quite cutting at times, but I sort of get why. Well, I don't. I haven't lived her life, and I can't imagine what it would have been like to have been a woman who was in an accident like that at that period, in history, and to have this burning desire to paint that's come from, I don't know, somewhere that you didn't expect, and then to be able to find a way through. I mean, you look what happened to Tina and all the other women that nobody's ever heard of that were kind of in there, and you're like, well, just as incredible artist, but she managed to find a way to kind of do what she needed to do. And part of that is hooking up with Diego, I think, did facilitate that. But when no one else is... It's like, I've read it somewhere recently about her work, is like incredibly personal, like so personal yet totally universal. And you asked about like why now, and that will always, like, from the day she did it to now, but now we can talk about it. And some stuff we still don't talk about miscarriages in the same way. And I'd really admire her I think she was an incredible person. And I think what she achieved in 47 years was quite astounding.
Can I just add something? I think it's interesting as well that I think maybe with a woman, we often ask ourselves, do we like them? And I think she is likable and unlikable. And I think what's interesting is that she doesn't sort of care. And that's what comes through her art. And that sort of force of personality is what you're drawn to. That sense that, kind of, we were talking about this the other day, that she's a superstar for a reason.
Yeah, she's that badass friend that you kind of think, how does she get away with that? But she does, Anyone else? One more? Yeah, Jill?
Yeah, I thought it was really compelling. I loved it. I wondered, who did you envisage your audience would be when you were making it?
Who wants to take that?
I mean, I suppose kind of ambitiously, arrogantly, everyone. I mean, everyone loves her. So, I've got teenage kids, and my middle kid is studying her doing his essay on her for A-level art. Like Mark said, everybody knows who she is, and I don't think I've ever worked on anything that has had as much of a reaction when I've told people I was doing this. So I don't know, I kind of hope everyone.
Brilliant. Okay. Oh, Anna, are you just going?
She had a question there. She had a question here.
Yes. Oh, one last one.
It was really beautiful, thank you, and it's really rhythmic and almost musical. It was gorgeous. I just wanted to ask if you talked about a kind of revisionist narrative framing, and you told the story of Tina Modotti really beautifully, I felt, and there was at that time this incredible cohort of women working in Mexico, a really huge kind of surrealist movement, which included Leonora Carrington and Tina Modotti, and it felt really poignant that you were telling Tina's story as well as Frida Kahlo, who is obviously a myth and has kind of transcended, in a very different way to a lot of the other women who were working in Mexico at that time. And I just wondered if it was important to sort of tell that story as well, to kind of talk about that context of these really vibrant women that were working.
Yeah, definitely. We would have done more, I think, if we
I
had the
think
room.
with more time and more room, we would have told you all about Lola Alvarez Bravo and Anita Brenner, and just an unbelievable cohort of women. I may, if I ever find the time to do it, do a podcast about it, because I'm quite obsessed with those women.
And we found out that Monica Bellucci has longed to make a film about Tina Modotti, but also we were all talking about the fact that that, like you said, there were other women who were maybe just as brilliant, and that this was an incredible time, and we were really glad to be able to reflect that.
Yeah, I mean, art is all about promotion, really, isn't it? So at the end of the day, that's how we know the artists. Well, listen, thank you, everyone. That was a fantastic chat, and it's a really beautiful series, so congratulations, one and all, and I urge you to watch episodes 2 and 3.
Jan, thank you very much for chairing that. We'd love to see you all back in the Cafe Mezzanine. There's more drink, more food. We'd love to see you there. Do please come and join us. Thank you very much for coming.